Hello! It is time to make a retro table. So I found these retro tiles that were going for free on Facebook Marketplace, picked them up, but when I got them home, 2/3 of the box was filled with just these plain, boring white tiles and not the cute cream tiles on top. I then went and bought these Kit Kat tiles, also off of Facebook Marketplace, I think for $25 or $35. So my plan is to do the cream with brown edging tiles on the top of the table, and then use those burnt orange Kit Kat tiles around the base. If you want to see how I go making this cool vintage retro table, then stick around. Also, just a quick call out to say I have created a free downloadable PDF that you can find in the description down below. It includes all of the materials I used, all of the steps I took, all of the sizing and specifics around the tiles, all of the dimensions with written instructions, and also loads and loads of pictures and diagrams because people like to learn differently. It might help you to make this exact same side table or to get an idea of how you should go about making your own and doing sort of your own custom side table as well. If you do use the PDF, please let me know how you go, if it was useful, and yeah, let's get cracking. Alright, so to start with, I have got all of my materials and some more over here. I've got a box of these beautiful burnt orange Kit Kat tiles, all on netting. I've got my individual retro tiles that I got for free, some are on netting. I've got my travertine colored grout. I've got a little sand diamond half paint pot that I had mixed up a while ago. I've got my wall and floor tile adhesive. The one thing with this was to make sure it had timber on it. I've also got 3 sheets of this 1200 by 450 by 12mm particle board. The recommendation for which wood to get was actually plywood, but purely based off of cost, I went for this chipboard particle board instead. The one thing with particle board is if it gets wet, it absorbs. So I'm also going to be putting a waterproof membrane on this to try and make sure that that doesn't happen. This is going to be a side table that is just indoors, so hopefully that helps in terms of not absorbing moisture and things on top of that waterproofing membrane. I've got a level, got a tape measure, pen, and I've also got my little 2IC helper / sight dog. Now that I've got my tiles, I know the spacing and also have my wood and know how thick that is, I can start doing the exact measurements for what my base box should be and my top box. Alright, so now that I have those measurements, that will inform how much I change these ones. So I'll have exact to the mil measurements for my bottom box. So this will be box 1, and then my top box. So this will be box 2. And then I will just glue these together. I've got a bunch of 3mm tile spacers as well. All right, and we're gonna be using an electric table saw to cut the wood. So we will just plug it in and then twist this little dial here to whatever measurement we have written down, so we don't need to trace out on the wood or anything, and then we'll measure our next piece from that because the saw is kind of a little bit thick, so it would not be accurate if we drew it all out and cut on the lines, if that makes sense. I've got some safety equipment as well, so a couple of pairs of protective glasses and then also a couple of pairs of earmuffs. So our first measurement is 421, so on the yellow strip I've positioned this at 42 and then 1 additional mil over, and then locked it down below the little saw. also making sure I just clearly label each of my pieces as they're cut. So I don't want any confusion for what piece is what and what's been cut or hasn't been cut already. So now we are going to take the 4 pieces we just cut for the base, glue them together, use this gun. So it's a T-nailer gun, which will just put some really thin nails in there to hold it together whilst the glue dries. And then we will measure the top and bottom based off of this stuck together to finish off this base box. This is the glue we'll be using to stick the pieces of wood together. So it's called Instant Nails and it goes in this little applicator metal gun. We're also using a little set square just to make sure all of our angles are 90 degrees and correct.
You want to run it as a bead.
So one continuous piece, is that right?
That'd be good, yeah.
I'm just conscious of the end of these so much. Well, I don't really need to.
So okay?
So we've got inside, yeah, and outside. And bottom piece. It is great. Definitely a good thing.
Okay. You go those 2 corners. Yep. And then we go.
Alright, so now we have our bottom box all glued together and we are moving on to our top box. So we just laid out all 36 tiles so we could get a really exact measurement and made sure we put the edge of the tile, so the piece that will be on those 4 sides, up how we want it to be once we've glued it down. Alright, time to stick on the top box to the bottom. I'm like, we must not.
It's not even your glue.
Exactly.
Exactly on the lines that we had before.
Yep. Okay, and both my top box and my bottom box have been glued together. So we stuck all 4 sides of the top box to the bottom piece, figured out the right spot to place it on that bottom box. So that's where you can see the black pen line. So we just flipped this upside down and figured out the correct distances and traced out where it should be. Stuck a bunch of glue on the base of this, just in the center area, and then connected the top and the bottom. And then once we put some nails through that, we then stuck on the final top piece and closed it all off. Now I am going to go ahead and add some primer. Also, it turns out I bought the wrong primer. So luckily my parents had this Diveco Ultra Prime. What I'm going to do first is just paint the bottom of my box with the little paint pot that I brought. Okay, so that is dry enough. That's been about 30 minutes now. It doesn't need to be neat or anything anyway. It's just in case anyone catches a glimpse of the base. Let's turn this over. Time to prime. Oh, it's so blue. I just finished applying my primer. So I'll give it 30 minutes to dry and then I will start applying my waterproof membrane. So I'm using this waterproofing membrane as well to try and keep as much water and moisture out of my wood as I can. Time to apply the membrane, which is kind of like a bit of a sludge. And that is my waterproof membrane all coated on. So I will leave it to dry overnight and then get started with my tiling first thing tomorrow morning. All right, and I'm just cutting a couple of sheets of tile. So I need 4 sheets of 2 sets or 2 rows of Kit Kat tiles, and then I need 4 just individual rows because it's 3 per side. I'm also prepping the really small little cream tiles by taking all of this webbing off the back. And I'm also using the 6mm notch trowel to apply my tile adhesive.
And this stuff is much better done with a machine, but anyway.
So we're battering the trowel.
Put it down like that. Now we'll put a block in behind so this doesn't easily move. And you go down to the bottom and then up.
Ooh.
And then up to the top. And you do it in sections.
So I just have to...
I'll line it up this side. Back towards me.
It just needs the same amount of tile hanging off either side.
This has got to come more this way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a bit more even now.
Okay.
I just have to do each individually.
So I'm going to trim. Oh no, it's enough. And I'll push it on for you a bit.
Yep.
Looks good, Maisie. Yeah, you will have to.
Okay, and my base is all tiled. So I've got my little spaces in between. These are 3mm, whereas on top I will be doing 1.5mm spacing. Also, I made sure that as I was going along, if any glue came through the cracks a bit too much, I just used my little scraper to get it out, just to make sure my grout will be able to fit properly and it won't be taken up by adhesive. Also, before I forget, and there are more tiles in the way, I'm just adding some of my cream paint to this little underside section because it won't be tiled or have anything on it. All right, tiles are all laid out and set up. 1.6 meters squared. Oh, okay. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. So you reckon like small? Yeah, I'm just using that as an example.
So if there's not enough room, you push the tile that way and that way. You don't let it come over your line. You only got to use one spacer on the small format tiles. Almost finished.
Yeah.
And successfully break it. It's probably about the parking grade.
I'll figure it out. Gotten that far yet.
So what I'm going to do is I go from the middle.
Yep. Okay, and the tiling segment is all finished. So I will take these spaces out tomorrow morning, transport her back to Sydney, and then add in my grout. Okay, she's been drying for over a week now. I think it only takes about 2 to 3 days for the tile and wall adhesive to stick and set usually, but I needed a little bit of a rest, especially with the 6-hour drive back to Sydney. So I have propped her up on a couple of boxes and stuck one of my leftover particle board sheets on top. And now I am going to get to grouting. So for my travertine colored grout, I am just going to do little bit by little bit. So pour in a little bit of my powder, create a toothpaste consistency, do 1 set of 3 of the Kit Kat tiles, so one side, and then mix up some more. So yeah, I'm just starting with a really small amount of grout. I'll see how far that gets me and then mix more. The aim with the grout is just to add little bits of water, stir, and then more water if I need to, or more grout if I've made it too wet, until I create a nice toothpaste consistency. Okay, I've got a nice toothpaste consistency. So now I'm gonna get started on applying my grout. All right, so I'm just taking a little bit of that grout mixture, getting it on my hands and literally smushing it between each tile so I get it to the very back of that gap. And then I will take my grout float and smooth it all out. So I'll go over it diagonally with the grout float. I'm also being very careful on my corners, top and bottom, and just making sure that that line looks really nice on each of my 4 sides. So then I am just taking my grout float and diagonally going over that section that I just did. I've been trying to find the right technique for this, but different directions give a different result. I guess if you didn't do it diagonally, it would probably just dig out all of the grout you just put in, so it makes sense. I've left this to dry for 15 minutes and now I'm just taking a very lightly damp sponge and wiping over the tiles. So I'll repeat this a few times. I think on average it's been maybe 5 wipes per side so far. And then tomorrow, once the tiles have dried a bit more, I'll go around and polish the tiles individually. Also trying to go diagonally when I use my sponge. So for each of my corner joins, I'm just getting my grout, again, smushing it in there. So just smush it down and then make sure it's nice and even and looks good for the other side where it joins up. And then I'm just running my pinky finger down along that line to smush it in and then taking off the excess from here and then taking it off from here as well. And again, making sure each little join looks nice and neat. Whilst I'm waiting for that final side to dry so I can wipe it down with my sponge, I am just taking the tape off of all of these to get the top ready for grouting as well. The base took me about 5 hours, but I am finally onto the top, which is the last bit for this side table. So I've just got 1.5 millimeter spaces between tiles on the top, whereas on the bottom I had 3 millimeter spaces. It's been 15 minutes, so now I am just wiping over the tiles with my sponge. And I'll do the same for the other 3 sides and then finish the top. I actually ended up just going over each crack with my finger because the grout float was not that helpful for around the sides. Final little bit. Oh, so excited to finish this. Final step for grouting. Okay, and that is the grouting all done. I'm gonna clean up, let this dry for 24 hours, give the tiles another wipe or 2, and then I can show you the results. Time for another wipe down. So I'm just trying to polish up these tiles as much as I can. My retro side table all done. I hope you like it, and I hope the PDF was useful if you ended up using it. As per usual, I'll see you in the next video.